Hello, Albuquerque.
In those days, it was 41, so there was a lot of racism.
I'm a Boeing 737 first officer.
I did a lot of research, and I recommend everyone do the same.
And now suddenly you're addicted,
Right.
literally to heroin.
Where were you born? I was born in Cambridge, England.
Both my parents were drug addicts.
Welcome everybody back to another episode of Extraordinary Joes. Today I've got another special guest with me, my good friend Ronnie. Ronnie, thank you for taking the time and coming in here to talk to everybody.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
I appreciate it, bud. So today I've got a few little topics I want to touch on with Ronnie here. Now, let's start with intros, of course. You and I go back quite a ways. Dude, I've known you forever.
Since I was a kid.
Since you were a little
kid.
Like a little pestering, annoying little kid. Like,
Yep.
Listen, man, I'm not, that's not a shout out to you. Everybody was an annoying little kid. I was one myself. I'm just saying you were that young when I met you. You guys lived off the frontage road by the Downs. And I think it was I was 18 maybe when I met you. So how old would that have made you?
Gosh, I don't know. I was like, when we lived there, I was around 13, 12. 13.
Oh, you couldn't have been that old.
Yeah, maybe like 11. Gosh.
Yeah, you guys were real young.
We were pretty young. So.
Yeah, like my brother's age maybe. It was, let's see, that was 2000, give or take.
Ooh, 2000.
2000, 2001 maybe.
Yeah, no, then I had to be 12, 13. I was born in 87.
Okay, all right.
So I was still pretty immature though.
So. weren't we all? That makes sense. Okay.
And especially when, the friends always came around. My older brothers, Andrew's friends, of course, like you guys.
Of course.
Always wanted to be all, I want to go.
Yep. Nope. I mean, and what little kid didn't? Everybody does that. That's nothing new. My little brothers did it to me and my friends too. So I met Andrew probably, I'm going to say like a year before I met you guys. We were hanging out, and by happenstance, a friend of ours' brother was a cop, and we were high as shit. We had smoked out my little car, and we went to meet up with him, and he thought we were drinking. I don't think he thought we were drinking. He could see and smell the smoke as we opened our window, and it billowed out of my car. But he said, okay, well, you guys aren't driving tonight. I just came from a DWI scene. It's not going to happen. Park the car and walk. I don't care where you stay. You're just not driving. So somehow we ended up at your house, me and Andrew. And I remember Andrew going into the kitchen to make us something. And bro, I was passed out like in 5 minutes. And yeah, you were a little kid. And then we hadn't really had too much interaction between then and, years down the line. And then I saw you again, and you were a full-grown man, and it was a trip because it was like no time had passed in my mind, but obviously time had passed because you're this full-grown dude and you have kids and all kinds of shit. That's absolutely absurd. Time.
It's wild.
So I want to discuss with you loss in Santa Fe. I don't know if it's the same for you. I do know it's the same for you as it is for me, but I don't know more if you've had the experience like Andrew and I have, where friends, acquaintances, coworkers, things like that are just constantly falling. Like is that something that you experience as well?
Absolutely, James. It's one of the hardest things that I've had to deal with, and it's been so tragic, and it's been so often. It seems like just yesterday I was a little kid, just, running around on the bikes or whatever with the friends, ditching school, smoking pot and, doing all that stuff, I'll say this too, from the pot itself, even recognizing how the pot used to be that brick pack Mexican with all the seeds and stems.
Oh yeah, the good stuff.
Yeah, right. Until now it's like the dabs and the crazy stuff.
I don't even speak those languages anymore. I don't understand what these kids are talking about.
Right. I heard this joke not too long ago from one of my favorite comedians, Nick Swartzen, and he was like, dude, he's all some of the crazy stuff nowadays that's going on. You got like that one friend who's like a stoner, but then he's like also like this MacGyver. He'll like make anything into like, a smoking device. It's like I came home one day, like the VCR was like missing. I'm like, it doesn't work. I found it and it doesn't work. And he's like, oh yeah, dude, turned it into a bong. This is all you press, put your weed right here into the little slot. You press play and it plays the weed into your head. And I was just like,
Nick Swardson's hilarious, man.
yeah.
That guy's
But
awesome.
I was just like, yeah, we've come so far from that in such a short amount of time that I even stopped smoking weed about 4 years ago. I was a huge pothead.
Ah, tell me about it. You're
yeah.
preaching to the choir, but I stopped in 2007, borderline 2008 was the last time I smoked.
Yeah, and I feel grateful almost, and I'm not going to say that it is a gateway drug because I don't think it is. I do think that it does provide a small gateway to the mentality.
Yeah, no, it
Being
definitely
susceptible
it definitely lowers your inhibitions, because I can say from my smoking experience that when I was in high school and everybody was smoking, and I was beyond blown away that these people could function daily, like just from what I had heard in the DARE program and all that kind of stuff, that I was terrified of weed. I thought it was like the worst thing ever. And then, come to see, when the first time I smoked, I was like, this is what people were talking about, what people were scared of. Like, this is nothing. And then, but also to that extent, it also freed my inhibitions to be like, oh, well, if weed isn't this bad, then these other drugs can't be that bad. And so I tried them, but I will say I only went to 2 drugs outside of the non-chemical or chemical spectrum.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's aside. That's another topic for another day.
Yeah. Well, so what I was getting at though is how things have evolved so quickly, and even from, like I said, it feels like I was just back in the day, not too long ago. It feels like it was the other day. Sorry, that I was just hanging out with the friends, and all of a sudden we're like, oh, it's weed, and now all of a sudden it's fast forward 15 years later, 20 years later now. I've had so many friends that I can't even believe that I haven't spoken to in a long time. And all of a sudden they're outside of Walgreens, just 120 pounds, dirty, looking like they've been sleeping under a bridge or something. And hey brother, you gotta, and I'm like, whoa, dude, Javier, like, is that you? Or like, someone, I don't know somebody by that name, but I'm just,
That's fine.
When I offend anybody. But yeah, it's like, it's such a trip. And, even from seeing how my brother went so fast, my brother Michael, from his addiction, it started off with weed. And then one day he said he just had an injury to his back. He started just with the pain pills,
Dude, okay. So, I'm glad you brought that up, and I do want to discuss a lot about Michael. I have a lot of good memories with Michael, even, after the childhood years when I first met you guys. Michael, I bought a couple Xboxes that guy built for my brothers for their Christmas presents. And
phenomenal, huh?
He was amazing, and I'm very sad that he's gone. He was a good dude. But on that note, he went through some experiences that a lot of people will not go through. But now, before we get too deep into Michael, I want him to have his own discussion. Yeah. So before we go on there, I just want to touch on what you were saying about your friends. Now, you seeing your friends in public in those conditions is a trip, because that's something I've never had to deal with. Now, coming up in Santa Fe, I did have a lot of loss, but it was almost like not real, because I would see it like a post on social media or something that somebody so-and-so had passed away. And, this was almost daily. I was seeing people passing away, but I never saw it up close and in person. I saw funerals, I saw the aftermath, but I heard the stories, and I talked to other friends who were friends with these friends, and that same thing, just drugged out, robbing places, spending lots of time in jail. I don't know, do you remember Rex?
Yeah.
Yeah, Rex passed away in jail, and
yeah, it was a crazy story too.
I could have never pictured Rex on drugs.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he loved to drink, but I could have never pictured him going into those hard drugs. Like, our whole crew that we hung out with back then, nobody was into that. That was like something that the skids did. That was something that the weirdos did. Like, we didn't go into those kind of drugs. We got high and we drank a lot.
It was almost like, I've heard so many stories where People like even like Rex who just like to drink and party and have a good time.
Yeah.
Maybe smoke a little weed or whatever, cigarettes even. And then there was that one time at a party where somebody said, "Hey, you want to smoke some weed or whatever?" And there was something else in it. And from there, they instantly got hooked because they liked that high. I don't know if you recall, he was in your and Andrew's age group. His name was Doggo. Everybody called him Doggo.
Never heard of him.
He was in, he went to the same high schools and stuff. Anyway, his little brother was in the same age group as me. Let's say this kid went to Brazil to go train with the Gracie Barra family.
Wow.
For jiu-jitsu and everything. And he came back and he was going to do something big. And same thing happened with him. He just liked to drink and party. And one night, I remember seeing him outside the shelter down the street from my house. He just said, he was at a party and somebody just gave him the wrong stuff. And he ended
What
up
a trip.
really liking it. Really.
That's
just
fucking awful. And now I know there's that whole stigma and that whole, people judge Native Americans for being alcoholics. And from
genetically susceptible, they say.
And from my experience, it's true. I've had a roommate in college who was a Native American from Window Rock, as a matter of fact. His family lived in Albuquerque. I'm sure they still do. But that guy, the second alcohol touched his lips, he wouldn't stop till he was blackout drunk. I saw him punch a cop. He obviously went to jail. I saw a lot of crazy shit with that guy. And every night he was just ready to drink again. And it wasn't like, oh, let's have a beer. It was like, hey, give me a bottle of E&J. What the fuck is wrong with you, dude? Like, holy crap.
It's just insane.
But I would have never pictured so many of my friends and Andrew's mutual friends just going to the extremes of those drugs, spending their days in parking lots begging for money, robbing cars, ending up in and out of jail. Like, some of these dudes had really good lives before they got hooked. And the drugs is one thing, but then we've experienced loss through murder. We've experienced loss through just the most random shit, car accidents, health stuff. Like, dude, I'm no joke. I can probably name at least one person I came up with or was a friend with that had passed away for every year of life I've had. And I'm 42. So, and that's just a rough estimate. I'm sure there's more. And my brother included in that. Like, it's a trip. Santa Fe, I think, I don't know, maybe it's just my theory, but my wife grew up here in Albuquerque. She doesn't know anybody who died under any of those circumstances. She had a grandpa who died of old age. She had another grandpa who died of old age, and that's it. That's all she knows who's died.
Yeah, you don't feel like there's so much. I mean, I feel like I've heard the exact opposite of Albuquerque, I guess, just because there's so much crime.
And that's what I would assume, but my wife is living proof. She lived in the ghetto. I lived in the ghetto in Albuquerque. I saw my neighbor get shot. He didn't die. I don't know anybody who died in Albuquerque.
Yeah.
But coming up in Santa Fe, I would have never pictured the amount of loss that I experienced growing up there. It's fucking insane.
Would you say it was because it's so small and a condensed community that...
Well, okay, so there's a lot to it, in my opinion. The breakdown of it stems a lot from gentrification. There's a lot of the city trying to push out its lower and middle class in exchange for bringing in tourism and upper class. Mm-hmm. And it started in the North Hills and has worked its way down into town, and like there's no programs for youth. Okay, there might be, but they're very few and far between unless they're associated with the schools.
Or Santa Fe Prep or things like that you actually have
St. Michael's, yeah.
You have to pay to get into.
Right,
yeah.
But there's no late night teen stuff. When I was a kid in Santa Fe, there was a late night roller skating thing at the roller rink every weekend. So kids could stay off the streets and go roller skating. Shit, that's great. Roller skating rink shut down, bowling alley shut down, and a lot of it stems from people drinking and crime and fighting and gunshots and all that kind of shit. So that's a whole nother story, the whole ghettoism of the poor community or whatever. But
I feel like it's almost like they didn't just give people chances though to do it. It's like once it happens, oh my god, okay, we're gonna take this away. Maybe it was just a good excuse for the city to take it away, and that way they could turn it into
my thoughts else. Exactly. And so there's the community center. My brother spent a lot of time there, and that's great and all, but that's, shut down by what, 8 o'clock, 6 o'clock, something. Mm-hmm. It's not open late for people. So the sun goes down, and what do you think these kids are gonna do?
Exactly.
They're going to get into alcohol, and alcohol is going to lead into drugs, and drugs is going to lead into homelessness, and homelessness is going to lead to death. Like just a horrible, never-ending cycle.
Before they die, they're gonna break into some houses or some cars and
and victimize other people who are not any better off than they are.
Exactly.
It's a vicious cycle, and I hate to judge Santa Fe like that, because before I moved out of Santa Fe, I was gung-ho for Santa Fe. I loved it there. Like, my whole life was there. My friends were all there. My brother's buried there. Like, Santa Fe was my place. But the past 10 years living here in Rio Rancho, bro, like, I don't even want to visit Santa Fe. Like, it's so much nicer down here. You don't have to live with the same fears that you lived in Santa Fe. I grew up with an anxiety of always watching my back for no fucking reason. Just because I was so scared of the place. Like, it's insane.
You know, you make me think about Rebecca a lot. My sister Rebecca. Yeah. That was at the forefront of, reasons why she wanted to move, particularly to Rio Rancho, because she just wanted to, end it all there. Her and Josh were like, we want to build a new life, and Rio Rancho was pretty much it for them. They started in Albuquerque, I believe, but then they, been back and forth through Rio Rancho and here and there. I think their church is around here. Maybe it's a little bit further down there, that Sagebrush, the big one. Yeah. The big, huge one.
That's what everybody is here. There's a couple versions of it here, but...
Yeah. So Josh is the lead guitarist guy. Yeah. And, they were big into the church. But I remember not too long ago, Rebecca really just... again, shaming Santa Fe, and she was like, I cannot believe we even live there. She's like, I'm so glad that we moved out here. And another thing she expressed was that she had too many just the old relationships with people that she felt were just not good enough for toxic. So she just didn't want to have that around anymore, and so she just decided to...
Good for her, because most people don't ever make it out of Santa Fe. Living proof is all the people that I can name that I've lost never made it out of Santa Fe. They just grew up there, lived there, died there. Yeah. And it's fucking sad, because there's such a big world out there. And it blows my mind, the polar opposites of not only Santa Fe to Rio Rancho, but Albuquerque to Rio Rancho. And it's basically the same city. Yeah. But you come over here and things are affordable. Life is easy. There's plentiful space.
Super calm. I love the
everything's
views,
mellow. Yeah, everything. Like, it's insane. And the cost of living is so low that everybody can afford it. Yeah. Our first house here in Rio Rancho that we bought, we paid, I don't know, like $140,000 for. Bro, our payments were like $700 a month.
Wow, jeez.
And it wasn't huge or anything, but it was our house. Yeah. And we owned it. With a half-acre lot with a 2-car garage. Like, that's some shit I could have never afforded in Santa Fe. I was looking on the Zillow app the other day, and bro, there's like single-bedroom casitas in people's backyards that they're selling for $500,000. It's just this 500-square-foot place. Yep. And the sad thing is, people are buying these properties.
Those things will go rented for like $1,500 to $2,000 a month.
And that's exactly what I'm speaking on, the gentrification. It started up in the hills with all the multimillionaires. It's moving through downtown Santa Fe, and now it's going to start moving its way to the north side, or the south side of Santa Fe, I guess. And it's really sad, because the more that spreads, the more everybody gets pushed out of Santa Fe.
Yeah, there's a lot of growing towards the south of Santa Fe as well.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And it's not getting cheaper, though. It really is.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Gentrification, man. Yeah. Push out the poor and make room for the rich. So sad. Well, I'm glad that I'm not the only one who feels that way about Santa Fe, because... for a while there, I was starting to think, well, what if it's just me? What if I've just had bad luck? But then I think about, like, you guys and Andrew and all the loss you guys have experienced. And I'm like, this is fucking nuts. It's not just me. This place is just...
Yeah. And I will touch on my mom, speaking for that matter, too, and we were talking about Michael, how his injury was just something that was a back injury, man. And I know... He didn't hurt himself really that bad, but he played it out like, oh my God, I can go to the doctors and they're going to write me a script for this and I'm going to take it. And then all of a sudden, oh, it feels so good. Oh my gosh, I'm going to take another one. Right. And then before you know it, you're getting 100, 200 pills a month or whatever. and it's just ridiculous. And then all of a sudden the doctors say, hey, we're going to have to lower you down, and now all of a sudden you're addicted,
Right.
literally to heroin. So where do you go?
One of my brothers went through the exact same thing. Long story short, somebody diagnosed him with fibromyalgia, which I have an opinion on it. It's not mine to judge, but
yours, brother. So,
but
of course.
Anyway, he got prescribed oxys or something like that, and he started taking them normally, and then he started taking them abnormally and started snorting them. Well, here we are 15, 20 years later that he's still been taking them, that he doesn't need them, and thank goodness he snapped out of it himself with no help or no threats from anybody, but he got himself clean. But that's not the story for most people. Most people don't get themselves clean. It's so freaking sad. I feel lucky that my brother was able to overcome it.
Very rare. Very rare.
Very rare. I think he did it as motivation from his kids. He's got a couple young kids, and he wants a better life, which I'm sure everybody does, even when they're taking those pills. But then they take the pills and forget about everything else that's going on. But now let's go back to the subject of Michael.
Yeah.
Michael was your twin brother.
Mm-hmm.
Good dude. Very smart. Super healthy.
Great guy.
Exercise.
Super smart. Really.
Like a bulky dude. He just impressed me how that when I saw him as a kid, he was just a little kid, a normal little kid. And then next time I saw him as a teen, or a later teen, I guess, this dude was a fucking bodybuilder. I was like, what in the shit? And then didn't he have some thing with a shooting? He got shot.
Yep. And it was actually over drugs. So
I figured, but that's
over money. At that time, I believe he was just dealing. He was in that mentality of just, hey, I can get these and sell them to people. So he was doing that and partly doing his prescription drugs as well. So story goes, some dude just tried to rob him and pulled out a gun on him. He didn't want to give up his stuff, and that was it. He got shot. So,
jeez.
Yeah, thank God he made it to the hospital in time. And
where did he get shot at?
Right in the
abdomen.
Right lower abdomen, pelvic area.
Jeez,
so,
dude.
Probably could have bled out pretty quick too had he not, just been rushed to the hospital. So he's very lucky that happened.
Yeah.
There were so many other things though that happened to him because of drugs. Also, I remember my mom calling me and. Bless my mom, I love her and I miss her so much. I always used to call her the family newspaper because every time something happened, she was right there on the phone telling us all each other's business.
That's what moms do.
Right? And she's like, calls me and she says, Michael, someone beat him up really bad. And I'm like, wait, what? She was like, yeah, well, apparently it was one of Andrew's friends. Well, it was Crystal, who was, my older brother Andrew's ex-girlfriend.
Yes.
One of the friends from her sister's little clique or whatever. I think it was one of the boyfriends. So, dude gets mad over drugs and absolutely wails on Michael. I don't even know how Michael let it happen. I would think that it was around the time, and I don't remember perfectly, but it was around the time where I want to say Michael was just kind of like an addict trying to just do stuff. So he would get really skinny. And just like you said, he was this big dude all the time.
Yeah, he was.
It was impressive.
Yes.
And when he would be on the drugs, I mean, geez, he would instantly lose like 80 pounds,
That's
100
crazy.
pounds. It was crazy.
He looked like a completely different person on those skinny times. I remember seeing him after the bulk down at his low and being like, what in the shit? Like, how did this even happen?
Yeah. I remember seeing him outside of Walgreens one time, and I was just so mad at him. It was like when things like that would happen, I would just immediately go into anger mode. I didn't want to give him any type of compassion or anything. I partially regret that.
That's really hard to do, but it also conveys a message. And it's kind of important to get that to somebody that you care. Send that message that, hey, look, this is not okay. I love you and I hate seeing you like this. It's not okay for you to do that. So it's not, don't judge yourself like it was something completely wrong and he was going to hold it against you forever. In that state of mind, maybe he was upset, but I guarantee you down the line, had he come to a sobriety, he might have been like, dude, he was absolutely right. I can't believe I was like that too. It's not something you should judge yourself on.
Yeah, and I'd like to, if I could ever, even now that we're speaking here on this podcast, I would like to be able to ask just in a general question to people out there, anybody who might even hear this ever, maybe it just might be something that they're, they can touch on within their own thoughts, within themselves, is, did you ever really feel like you did go too far in being angry with your loved one who was in a state of addiction, and so that you felt like you kind of did the wrong thing in a way and you kind of look back and regret it?
Well, listen, no, to that note, and please, if you have a story or an experience, feel free to comment below about it. But it's easy to say after those people are gone and they're no longer around, it's easy to feel bad about that. But did you feel that bad when he was alive?
It's a really good question. Slightly, but not totally. No.
Right, you felt justified because you were trying to help him. It wasn't something vindictive. You weren't trying to be an ass to your brother. You were upset that he was in that state and you wanted to do better because you knew he could. Yeah,
because I let him have it, James.
Dude,
I let him have it quite a few times.
Well, that's justified. You weren't being vindictive. You weren't just doing it to do it. You weren't being an asshole. You were telling him, hey, I know that you're better than this. I know you can do better than this. What is wrong with you? Stop it.
Yeah.
And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, yes, you can feel bad about it, but it's not, you can't change it. He wasn't upset about it. I'm sure he didn't even remember it. So it's not something you should hold against yourself.
Yeah.
And people should never feel bad when they're trying to help their loved ones. Even if it's yelling at them, even if it's, if you have to step back from spending time with them, if it means that it's going to help them, then shit, man, don't ever feel bad about that. And people only start feeling bad when they're gone. Like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I should have just let him be him. Yeah, and then what? Maybe he would have passed sooner. Nobody needs that. You could have bought him time by yelling at him and helping him. I don't know. That's just my opinion. I've gone through a lot of scenarios with my brother passing and shit that I did fucked up to him and times that I felt like I shouldn't have done things. But then I think back about it and I'm like, well, in a lot of ways, those situations brought us closer. So I'm actually glad that I did something or said something because then we had the opportunity to be closer afterward. And so,
It was brought you guys closer in a way.
Yeah.
Just a little bit more.
Just the makeup afterwards and being able to tell each other, I'm sorry, or, from one party to the other, I'm sorry, so. Michael wasn't your only loss, and I don't know how you've done it, but you've had a lot of loss in the last couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah, I, my mama, which, I remember you and everyone else was at the funeral who remember her being such a great woman.
She was awesome. Your mom was funny as hell.
Yeah. She was,
and it was completely unexpected.
It really was, and...
she didn't have any major health issues. She wasn't, diabetic. Nothing.
She had they said that she had a partially collapsed lung, but she was doing fine with that. She was getting better from that, and she was just getting over a very small, I know this sounds weird to say, a small case of pneumonia, whereas a lot of people who knew my mom very well knew that she was very tough anyway.
Yeah.
Pneumonia wasn't really anything to her, so...
well, all the more for the case that you should take care of yourself no matter what. Like, I know your mom was tough and didn't think much of those things, but
right.
You kind of got to take shit seriously nowadays.
So the story goes is she just basically walked out of her and my dad were actually planning on moving from Santa Fe to Albuquerque.
Oh wow!
Because they want to be closer to the girls.
Yeah.
And Rosemary and Rebecca, and so they were staying at the Motel 6 over there at Paseo del Norte and the I-25, and while they were just looking for a property to rent around here, and she just went outside. You know, my mom was a great story also, speaking of the painkillers and stuff. She had gotten clean off of them. I
Wow.
was so proud of her because she had gotten totally clean, and I remember her calling me maybe 1 year after saying, hey, you know what today is? I said, no. She says, it's 1 day, it's 1 year that we have been sober from pain pills completely.
That's nuts.
And she actually, and I don't want to say this anything about me, she says, it's mostly because of you, Ronnie. And she says, if you wouldn't have walked into our house that day and made me smoke that joint in front of Dad, because I did. I made her smoke a joint, and I was like, dude, I'm like, that's when I was a huge advocate for marijuana, medicinal marijuana. And she instantly started feeling better. She really did. And she realized that there was some good medical use for marijuana. So we immediately got her card, medical card, and she started using it, and she just did not even look back on pain pills at all. You know,
That's great.
Yeah, the salves, the tinctures, all the other stuff like that, the creams and everything else, topicals and stuff for pain.
Yeah.
And because she had a back injury also, so she had a bad surgery at St. Vincent's, St. Victims.
What's new?
And turns out that she ended up getting an infection from there, so they had to do surgery on her surgery.
Holy shit.
And she still ended up with a 20% infection in her spine.
Damn.
Yeah, so she was just going to live with forever. So anyway, back to, you know, her just, I mean, she went outside from the hotel just to walk little midnight her doggy, and smoke her weed, and then that was it. She just kind of fell over, and, you know.
No kidding.
It was said it was very instant. So there was no trauma, which we all feel kind of better about.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
Yeah.
Was this daytime?
Nighttime. It was just right in the nighttime. I remember
God.
getting the call from my sister Rosemary, and I've never been from Santa Fe to Albuquerque so fast. I got here 14 minutes.
Jeez, dude.
Yeah, from my house in Santa Fe. 14 minutes going like 130 on the highway. So, you know, that was a huge loss for all of us because, as you know, my mom was a mom to so many, and of course, if she could be a great mom to so many people, then she could definitely be how great of a mom. You got to ask yourself, is she to all these kids, me, Andrew, Rebecca, Rosemary, and Michael?
Right.
So that was a big, hard time for me, loss, and, you know, it was devastating. It was absolutely devastating. I still, to this day, I tell people when I talk about my mom, that my mom always felt like she was my reset button. You know, we all have these kind of things in our life, a go-to person.
Yeah.
And naturally, it's your mom.
Sure.
Most of the time. I felt like every single time something really bad happened in my life, all I had to do was call my mom. And even though I knew everything wasn't going to get better, as soon as I just talked to her and she told me that it was going to be better,
Yeah.
it was better. It was all better. Just like, boom, quick, I'm done. I feel better now. Everything's reset, and I can take a big deep breath, and now I can keep going. And to this day, maybe that's why I kind of feel like I still in a kind of
Like you need your reset.
Yep, like I need a reset.
So that's awful, and again, I mean, I can't say condolences enough for your loss, your many losses. Good people in your family, and it's very sad that they're not here anymore. Somebody who is here, and I'd like to touch on it if you're okay with it, is Andrew.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew's had his struggles lately, which I was completely unaware of until you spoke on it. I mean, I had a hinkling of it because of social media stuff that I would see every now and then. And by the way, I'm not on social media hardly any at all anymore. That's why I've missed a few updates from you lately, but...
You see those reels I show you, though, right? I send you all those funny reels?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Well, yeah, see, I get... That's like the only notification I get, and I've turned all the rest of them off. I do... Anyway.
Because that's some really good, priceless humor, just so you know.
Fair enough. But, yeah, Andrew... I'm grateful he's still around, because there was a time there that I was starting to get worried about him becoming the next one we were going to have to
Yeah,
worry about. And from what I hear now, he's doing great.
absolutely. He's
That's
doing 100%
Fucking
better.
awesome. I'm so glad to hear it.
Yeah, Andrew fell in pretty deep, and I didn't even know until, I guess, a few years back when I just had seen him, walk out of, it's like the gas station or something. I couldn't believe that I had seen Andrew, 100 pounds maybe.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he's sweating, and he just looks not like himself at all. And I was like, I don't even know how, and I will say this is crazy, how from a cosmetic point of a vanity point, if you will, people, their teeth get really messed up. Andrew's teeth were just jacked up, and I was noticing, because I was noticing my older brother, and how I'm comfortable enough to say this, is my older brother was a beautiful man, He could have any girl practically if he wanted to, you know what I mean?
Sure.
He was just a very good looking guy, and his personality was just that much better. And just the way he carried himself, and the fact that he always was driving a nice car or
And dude was a great dude.
Really was. And I went to anger mode, and I pulled him to the side. I was like, what the fuck is your problem? Like, dude, what are you doing? I know you're on something. He just does that funny chuckle, what I mean, that Andrew
I know
does.
the Andrew chuckle.
Yeah, and he was like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, dude, you know what I'm talking about. And I'm like, what are you on? What are you doing? He's like, I'm not doing. I'm like, yeah, right, dude, don't lie to me. He's like, no, just been like really depressed. Started giving me all these,
the
reasons why.
Cop outs.
And, just the next few times I had seen him, it just got worse. It was like, he doesn't have a car, goes to stay with my mom, borrowing money from her when she's even borrowing money from me, and I'm paying bills, because my mom always knew, and I'm very proud about that, is even being one of the youngest in the family, I always have stayed just busting my butt all the time. And I don't even know how I've done it, but I've been able to help out others. And my mama was one of them. And
that's great.
She could always call me, hey, the electricity's going to get turned off.
Yeah.
Can you please, or we need groceries or this or that.
Sure.
And I was just so mad at Andrew, because it was like, man, you're over here.
You're filter feeding off of somebody who needs it more than you do.
Exactly,
Yeah.
And
again, that leads back to the point that we all knew Andrew. We know his capabilities, we know his knowledge, we know how good he can do, and to see that as a downside is
a great man, one of the best mechanics I've ever known in my life.
I got him a couple of jobs down here before I knew that he was on all of that, and he never followed through with these guys. This guy's paid big bucks, and I just didn't have time to handle these cars. And I told him, I know a mechanic who works on your specific type of engines. This guy's phenomenal. And, I put him in touch, and Andrew would never.
Would you say that was like kind of one of the things that made you think or worry about him, because he was such a reliable person?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But I thought, honestly, I didn't know that he was as deep as he was. Like the whole social media post stuff came after that. This was my first indication that something was wrong, because I could always call Andrew and be like, hey dude, I got a job for you, this dude's gonna pay you big cash, and he'd be on it. He'd call almost instantly, or he'd be down there with the guy just working on the car right away. And to hear back days later from these guys, and they're like, yeah, your friend never called me. I'm like, oh fuck, dude, like,
yeah,
why? Is he okay? And then I try to call him and no answer.
Yeah, my brother was like one of the most reliable pieces of my life. My older brother always was there to pull me out of the shit,
Yeah.
Whether it was like stranded on the side of the road, or I fucked up my car somewhere.
Same.
Whatever it was.
Andrew did a lot for me.
Right there. In the snow, in whatever, in the mud, whatever it was, whatever time of day.
Yep.
He was there.
Yep.
And so, I couldn't believe that. Like I said, going back to, seeing him a few times after that, it was always anger mode with him.
Yeah.
It was always anger mode. And I think Andrew understood that more than my brother Michael did. So he kind of just stayed quiet. That was it. Did his chuckle, and that was about it,
Sure.
And just, he was like, whatever. I remember one time he admitted to me that he was like, yeah, no, I only just tried this once or whatever. I'm like, no, you didn't. Okay, whatever.
You don't lose 100 pounds by trying something once.
Exactly. And I don't know how, but to this day, he's back. I mean, he's been sober for like over a year and a half, 2 years
That's
now.
great.
You know, he's helping run this really great business at Brian's Auto Detail there on Airport Road.
That's great, man.
And he's got a lot of jobs for himself.
I'm super glad to hear that.
Even told him that, you know, when I get a chance, I would really like to, which means money, I want to invest in him because he's, you know, he could have so much.
Yeah, I agree.
He's thinking of just a mobile auto detailing.
Good for him.
So already got a van, and I'm like, how many things can you fit in that van?
Yeah,
Pressure washer, what else you need?
sure.
A couple of things, and you could go around and, you know, start your own business like that.
Absolutely.
So, but he's super duper sober now.
That's awesome.
Gained all his weight back.
I'm so glad to hear that. He looked funny as shit as a skinny dude. I didn't like it.
Yeah, he's like, it was weird. And it was sad to say, and again, from a cosmetic point of view, I noticed his hair was even going away.
Yeah.
His teeth, like
Yes.
I said. Now, I don't know how he fixed it. I'm like, I want to ask him one day. I'm like, how'd you fix
What's
those,
your secret,
how'd you
dude?
fix those fucked up teeth? 'Cause your grill was just smashed, dude. So, but he's, you know, again, I'm really glad that you said that. And I love just being able to hear that when you said, you know, one of the people who are here still.
Yeah, and I'm glad that he's still around because, yeah, I have a long history with Andu, and I met him in like 99 and didn't think of anything of it. You know, it was just another homie that I'd hang out with or an acquaintance. And no, Andrew became really close with me. He was a big support for me when my brother died. And I'm really grateful for him. So I'm glad to hear that he's doing better.
Yeah.
I appreciate him.
Yeah, he got his own place and
Good.
good. So
Good.
I was actually supposed to meet up with him for lunch yesterday, but I ended up getting a little busy myself.
Well, you know, life.
Yeah.
All right. Now that we've covered all of that, let's continue down the sad and horrid journey of loss. That wasn't the only loss you've experienced, was it?
Yeah, no, not at all. The most devastating recently was November 26th, 2023. My oldest son, Julian, he passed away. So it was what the police said was a freak accident. I think it was just more or less an accident and kids just messing around. You know, and him just, I don't know, not having his seatbelt on. He was in one of those, call it OHVs. It's like a off-road vehicle.
So just like one of those little 4-wheel razor type things with doors and everything or whatever.
I call it a golf cart with like 4-wheel drive.
Sure.
And I guess they were just, the story goes, they were just driving along in some little field. They made a turnaround there off Airport Road near the O'Reilly Auto Parts, and just ended up, he ended up falling out, and it fell on top of him, and it's just been the biggest loss, you know, of my life. And you know, I pray to God that I don't lose anyone else, and especially, of course, my other two boys, Anthony and Santiago, and of course my ex-wife. Even though we've, you know, parted our ways, we still, you know, stay close in communication, and we talk a lot, and still even spend time, you know, here together.
Good.
And there together, as you know.
Well, again, condolences, man. I can't say that enough. I couldn't imagine dealing with my brother's loss. Is definitely the hardest thing I've ever experienced in my life. That was the hardest thing I've ever had to go through, and it was damn near impossible to make it through for me. I couldn't imagine 3 people that close proximity to you in that short amount of time. That's fucking insane.
Yeah. And in a crazy, weird, mental type of way, I'd like to think about it like this: is with all due respect to my twin brother Michael and my mom, you know, this loss has really gotten to me, and you know, it almost hurts me to the core, to where I say it's hurt me enough to where I could say I can almost deal. I can deal with my mom, losing my mom. I could deal with losing my brother.
Sure.
But you know, that was my baby. And for those people who end up listening to this, you know, who know me, They do know that Julian was not my blood. He wasn't my blood son. He was my biological son. He was my stepson. But I did help raise him for over 10 years. And, that boy, he grew to call me daddy, maybe a year and a half after I had gotten with his mom. And I really, I fell in love with him. And I also fell in love with Santiago, who was her other son, who was not my blood. And again, he called me daddy since he was 4 years old. And, Julian had called me dad since he was 10 years old.
Sure.
And so, of course, Anthony, which, I had when I was 16 years old.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. So having Anthony at a very young age, 16 years old, in Santa Fe.
Yeah.
I had barely turned 16. I turned 16 November 11th, 2003, and my son came December 12th, 2003.
Jeez.
And so I would have been a 15-year-old dad had it not been for that month. But raising him, and I stayed by his side the whole time, even though it was backwards. His grandma and grandpa from his mom's side did not want anything to do with me at all. They wanted to just keep me as far away as they could, and I tried as hard as I could to stay around him.
Sure.
Even to the point to where I had to have my mom and dad come in, speak to them and say, "Hey, what's up, kid?
Yeah.
Our son wants to be a part of his son's life."
As it should be.
Yeah. So, I was so proud to have been a dad forever to my son since I was a kid. We grew up together, and then, when I had gotten with her name's Saida, my ex-wife, we raised our boys together, and it was like this just really beautiful family. Like,
sure.
We could go places, and it felt so good because so many people thought that we were just like a regular family, like we were in a mixed family or anything at all. And I was just so proud of that.
Now, real quick, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
just, culture vultures out there. By mixed family, you're not talking anything race. You're just talking that it's not all blood.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that so people don't freak out that you're, racist.
Yeah.
You never know nowadays.
Yeah, you never know.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but please proceed.
Losing him really just put a dent in all of our lives, and I, for one, feel grateful, of course, for the time that I had with him, and of course he was too young to go, and I'm just so absolutely devastated by it, and I miss him so much, and I wish I could just, like we all say, talk to him again, and
Yep. I mean,
things like that. But
anybody who came from Santa Fe, I know, understands and knows that feeling. So again, sorry for your loss, and I know there's nothing I can really say that's gonna help or make anything better, but again, like you said, just be grateful for the time you did have with him. Short but sweet.
Yeah, for this podcast too, I do want to say this one small thing is my son and I, Julian, who passed away, we were not on speaking terms for the past few years due to just problems that we had. Basically, his mom and I had split up at one point in time, and we went our different routes. He wasn't happy about that, about kind of, just the way I handled things, and he kind of just kicked me out of his life in a way, was mad at me that I had left. So I do regret not having said our piece to each other, and I know it was going to be hard, but I should have done it sooner than later. So for the people out who are listening to this right now, it's never too late. So, if my words, even if it could hit one person,
sure.
It's never too late. So reach out to that person no matter what.
Yeah, that's solid advice.
No matter how much pride you have to swallow.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, there is toxicity that people want to keep out of their lives, but if toxicity is not the reason you're not speaking, it's probably not worth it.
Absolutely. So 100% agreed. You couldn't have said it any better. And going back to even Santa Fe and having toxic relationships, there's so many people now that I think of who maybe I should reach out to.
Yeah, and and again, I try not to burn bridges ever because of things like that. I don't want to have the regret later. I'm very easygoing. I'm a very tolerant person, and so unless you screw me over personally or screw over somebody I care about in a bad way, you can always make up for shit. Like I'm pretty easy to forgive and forget, and I think a lot of people take that for granted, that's a possibility or something that's doable, but if you don't burn bridges, you never know what the future holds, and you don't want to live with regret that you did something that cost you one of those relationships, or cost you somebody you didn't want to cost, or did something that you didn't want to do, but you did it because you were upset in the moment, or it's I don't know, it's kind of not worth it in the long run. Your situation with your son's a little bit different because that's hard. Family dynamics are much harder to deal with. But generally, like you said, it's never too late, but it's easier to do, sooner than later. So
absolutely. And I mentioned pride in that, having to swallow your pride. I do want to make one thing clear for those of people who end up listening to this and might want to think or have their opinions on things, is it wasn't even pride for me. It was more fear. Fear for me.
Sure.
Fear that my son was just going to end up just being angry at me even more, or want to start a fight or do something. And that for me was a big thing. I was just afraid. It was not pride at all. It was just fear. And I wish I would have faced that fear sooner than, never.
On that note, I just want to thank you for your vulnerability, because I know none of this shit's easy to talk about, but I also find that once in a while, if you can get it out to somebody that you trust and care about, then it makes things a little easier. It's getting something off your chest, and you're doing it to me personally, but in the long run, hopefully a lot of people are going to hear this, and it might help people, it might not, but you've gotten it off your chest, and people have gotten a lesson or a story out of it. So it's all for the better in my mind. This is very positive stuff. I know it's morbid, and these tales of the premise of my podcast is that, you don't have to be a celebrity to have stories. Everybody has stories, but nobody gets to tell them. People outside of your immediate circle don't get to hear them. And there's so much interesting things that happen in the world that you can learn from, that you can just experience through thought or sound in this case. And I think that it's important for those stories to get out, and for those lessons to be heard and spoke of. And it's important for us to be vulnerable, especially nowadays with all the mental health crisis and whatnot. Like, getting this shit off of your chest and at least saying it out loud to somebody else, not just to yourself, it's important. That's really going to help, maybe not just yourself, but maybe others who hear it in your family, outside of your family, friend group, people who don't know you. Somebody else might hear this and it might help them. So
yeah, and I totally agree with that. And I want to say one small thing about that too, is there are people who want to also so very badly get things off of their chest. I mean, it's a shit show in their whole their minds and their hearts. Then there are people too who can't and don't want to.
And to that, I'm sorry to interrupt again, but to that note, like, therapy is expensive.
Absolutely.
Seeing a therapist or a shrink, if you will, it's not a luxury that everybody has, especially when you live in a city like Santa Fe that's so gentrified. You can barely afford rent, and you're expected to go talk to a therapist about your mental health struggles. Like, people can't afford that. So just a conversation with a friend, a conversation with somebody who's not a friend, a conversation that's going to get aired and somebody else is going to hear it, that can be huge relief for somebody. So
yeah, I'm thinking of a slogan already. Therapy is expensive. Podcasts are free.
Sure.
Podcasts are free. So,
well, again, thank you for the vulnerability. It's really important to me to get that true honesty and vulnerability from people.
Well, thank you. I feel grateful that
we're not done. Don't go ahead and say bye yet. I've got one more thing I'd like to talk about.
I was just going to say thank you for even letting me be here also today. It helps so much, and I would like to say this for anyone else who's out there as well, because I found this so detrimentally important to dealing with things since my mom's loss, since all these other things going through with just raising hardships through my kid and my kids and being a young father, is someone said this to me a long time ago, and I just keep these simple words now, and that's why I feel like I'm so able to be vulnerable with you and with
Sure.
so many people, is that I don't let these things define me in my life. This isn't who I am.
Right.
These are just things that have happened to me. And
I can absolutely vouch for that.
I think that a lot of people need to hear that one thing is
Yeah.
that it's not, this is not you. These are just things that happen to you.
Yeah.
And as soon as you can, like, believe
Separate the
that,
two.
yep, you can overcome like that. It's
Yeah.
not that hard at all. It's so easy. If
Yeah.
you just say it to yourself. I'm
Sure.
not letting this define me.
Sure. Well, that is solid advice as well, man. You're just full of tidbits today, aren't you? I appreciate that.
I'm full of tidbits always.
Okay, the last thing I want to talk about, and I want to follow it up with plugs and whatnot, but I want you to speak on your business dwellings. You've got an incredible work ethic. As long as I've known you, aside from being a little kid, as long as you were able to work, you were working.
Yeah.
And as of recently, you were basically like a vice president of a company.
I would like to think so.
I
I
mean,
would
that's
think
the way I took it.
Yeah.
That's the way I interpreted
really
it.
Overseeing operations.
Sure. So a COO.
Absolutely. It was a fun time, and it was also something that I really am proud of.
Yeah.
And was just kind of washed out like nothing was ever there all of a sudden.
That's horrible.
A couple months ago, it was a local concierge courier service that we were basically personal assistants on demand, and we were supposed to be the next big thing. It was a startup tech company that was just super promising. We had an app and we had our website, so you could do web ordering and also just go online on an app, and I mean, anything. We could do anything.
And can you, I don't know how much you can speak on, but can you tell a little bit of what happened and how it led to the point that it's at now?
I was just communicated that it was just money, and it's really unfortunate because I, for one, feel like it wasn't totally that true. But, I'm not the one really who had all the dollars in my pocket and was seeing all the dollars go
In and out.
Yeah,
Yep,
exactly.
fair enough.
So, that was pretty much it. It was just money and the fact that we were, a small thing that was supposed to have blown up already in the past 5 years and just didn't for whatever reason. So I feel like there was so many other things that we could have done to, make it profitable. But
Now, from moving forward, what's your plan?
well, my plan is to keep the same idea because I have created quite a few great relationships with local people in Santa Fe and even out of Santa Fe, such as artists and, just even real estate realtors and people who move in and out of Santa Fe from their vacation homes and things like that, to even down to very elderly people who relied on the old company I was working with for small things that really meant a lot to them, like specific prescriptions or even coming in sweeping off their porch and when it snows and bringing in their garbage cans and their mail because they can't walk a long driveway. So I plan on keeping that idea, but I will say that it's going to be called 505 Delivery, and it's actually going to be called 505 Delivery and Transportation. And what I want for people to know is that we'll basically be able to deliver anything, anywhere, in the 505 area, which is pretty much New Mexico. I know there's a few other area codes, but I really want to push the local, side of things.
That's good.
And transport people, airport rides. Will come even pick up your kids from school. I'm really working on that as well, and it's going to be a thing. We'll come, take your kids to appointments, soccer games, whatever else it is. with the proper insurance and go through all the
Good.
right routes and stuff like
Sure.
that, of course. But I want to be the all around everything. So, we could go pick up, a simple bag of hot Cheetos and a Snicker bar for you, or chimichanga from Allsups, if you really wanted it, all the way up to the ski basin or whatever.
Yeah.
Or we'll go move your piece of expensive furniture, or pick up your kids from a soccer game and get them home.
Great.
Whatever it is, we're going to be there to do it. And I really feel, happy and excited about it too, because it's going to be a local business. It's going to help out a lot of people. And one of the biggest things I'm looking forward to is anyone who I do end up having work with me, making their days and making their lives happen in a way on a monetary basis. I want to pay people really, really well.
Good.
So that's
Good. We need that.
things. Yeah.
Good.
So there was kind of one of the issues that we had, and I think I speak for even all delivery drivers and people, DoorDashers.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, and they're like, "What the heck is $3?
Well,
I just got $3."
Yeah. All those kind of new, Uber and Lyft and DoorDash and, all the delivery stuff, super convenient, but those companies, I don't know, maybe you can pass some of it off to being startups, but a lot of it is corporate greed.
Absolutely.
And that's a huge problem in the entire country. Corporate greed is like one of the worst things for business.
You couldn't have said it any better, because again, you were preaching to everyone when I say this. The corporate greed part is a huge thing, and I don't believe that even after 3 or 4 or 5 years you can still say it's a startup. I mean, come on, man. It's
Sure. Oh, no. Yeah,
I
no.
think that it's really like, it's got to be there or not be there. And for those people who say, "Oh yeah, well, we've still, kind of testing the model and stuff like this," which we got a lot of at this old company that I worked for. So.
My wife and I recently took a trip to Houston, and we got an Uber there from one airport to the other, which was a significantly long ride. And this guy had a newer Ford F-150, and he had a broken driver window. His mirror was kind of hanging. He's got a hole in his windshield, and and this is like a new truck, and he's got like damn near 100,000 miles on it. And he was talking to me about how tough it is, because he said that it's a 75-25 split with Uber. So he drives and he gets 25% of the fare, and Uber gets the other 75%. And he's like, "It's not enough for me to take care of my car." And he's like, "And now it's got so many miles, I'm going to have to go trade it in to get something new. But I can't, because it's not worth anything."
Oh, gosh.
Because,
Yeah.
it's a brand new vehicle with 100,000 miles. Nobody's going to want to buy that, so they're not going to give you anything for it. So I was like, geez, yeah, that's a terrible model.
Really is. I put 143,000 miles on a brand new Kia Niro within 2.5 years.
Yeah,
Driving.
I believe
Almost
it.
3 years.
I believe it.
And, those companies, yeah, it is, 75-25. And I really plan on just treating the drivers, people who want to come work with me, not for me, with me, really well.
I mean, a 60-40 split would be decent compared to a 75-25.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that as long as I, treat these, whoever comes to work for me or with me really well, they're going to do great for me.
Sure.
And again, I've made so many relationships with really good, kind people in Santa Fe that a lot of them know me so well that, they know pieces of my life. They know that I lost my son. They know that, I've lost my brother recently. They know just so many things about me, and I know so many things about them that I could just pick up the phone and call them even on a day that they don't need anything and just say, "Hey, I was just checking on you.
Sure.
Just wanted to see how you were doing."
Well, and I can vouch for that business model, because I worked for a company that sold auto parts that was fucking terrible and greedy as fuck. As the general manager of the store, I pretty much maxed out at $12 an hour.
Oh.
In charge of 30 plus employees, in charge of scheduling, financial deposits, receiving and shipping, in charge of everything for $12 an hour. That was my cap. That was the max I was going to ever get. And then I moved to another store that sold auto parts, and dude, I started as a counter boy at $11.75.
How did that make you feel?
The second company was phenomenal. I loved working for them. They gave you an incredible discount where the first company gave you a 10% discount. The second company gave you a at cost discount, 1% over cost.
Ouch.
So basically, with the first company where I'd buy something that was $100 with my discount, I would probably get it at the second company for $40-50.
Gosh.
Yeah.
And I know how much you spend on auto parts too.
Yeah, no, you don't.
Well, I kind of have an idea.
It's not good.
I mean,
It's not good. Let's not go there.
don't want to get you in trouble either.
No. So, real quick, do you want to just, if anybody wants to research you, reach out and talk to you, do you want to shout out your socials and all that kind of stuff where everybody can get a hold of you?
Sure, yeah. The only thing that I really have, I have Facebook, Instagram, and it's all under Ronnie Ahumada. And
Spell that last name, I know.
yeah, it's AHUM as in Michael, A, D as in dog, and another A.
Yeah, there you go.
And we live here in New Mexico, even though, we have a Spanish name. So many people have always been like, it's Ahumada or Ahumada. And I'm like, okay, I'll just say Ahumada. Thank you.
It's all right, bro. Don't worry. I'm not that deep into it. Before we get out of here, I did want to go back to one subject. Your brother's passing. We kind of got off topic and never... I know that it's very morbid and like maybe inappropriate to speak on, and I apologize if it's inappropriate, but people are curious and they want to hear these stories to see the outcome and what happened, how they passed. We never got to why Michael passed.
Yeah, well, Michael had passed away, and the really fucked up thing about it was that Michael passed away sadly by himself in the what used to be called the Warren Inn in Santa Fe. There's really ghetto apartments next to Schlotchke's.
Oh, yes.
Or whatever it's called there.
I know exactly what one you're talking about.
Yeah, and now it's called something else.
Okay.
But he had been, I guess, sober for 3 months.
Wow.
And I remember actually seeing him the last time I did see him. He was sober, and he had brought over, because at that time, his son, who I already legally adopted now, Ezekiel, he was already living with me at the time. And he brought over a pot roast that he had made. And so he brought over a pot roast, and it was like 9:30 at night, and I guess Ezekiel was already sleeping. So I was not in the anger mode. I was like, okay, now that I've heard and I've seen you're sober for a while, I'm still not going to totally, hey, what's up, and be, I'm not going to give you all my attention and be like super happy with you.
Okay.
So I just said, okay, cool, I'll get this, to Ezekiel. Have a good night. He says, bye. That was it. And a few weeks later, he apparently had just gone back to doing drugs. And what they say is that when you get off of drugs and you've been addicted for a while, that when you go back, your tolerance, of course, isn't the same.
Right.
And a lot of people think that it is, and that's how a lot of people actually do overdose when they've been clean for a while, and then they go back to it. So Michael had overdosed. He had fentanyl, and he had two type of benzos, I guess they call them. They're like, some anti-anxiety or something like that.
Okay.
So he had 2 types of those in his system, and fentanyl, and I believe it was methamphetamine as well. The girl that was with him had, I guess, they were just there partying or whatever, being together. She had noticed that he was overdosing, and from what I understand is that there was a lot of Narcan around the area where in his apartment that had been, I guess, used. And they think that maybe he used it, but it wasn't working, or maybe he used it a few times and was just kept going at it. So she ends up calling when it finally really looked like he was, he's taking his last dose or whatever, fentanyl and stuff. She called 911, and she left. And from what I've told also is that she left with a lot of his stuff. He was back doing well for the few months that he was sober.
Right.
He was getting back in electronics, and he had gotten like a big pallet from whatever online of whatever it was, Red Light of Death, Xboxes, and
Stuff that he could fix.
PlayStations. Yep.
Yeah.
And he was doing all that, and he was doing the computers again and stuff, and he ended up making a lot of money pretty quick. And apparently this girl took somewhere in the neighborhood of, I think, like $20,000 or $30,000.
Jesus.
And just called 911 and left him there. So they show up, they work on him for a little while, and they just couldn't bring him back. So unfortunately, they say that they didn't have any information for next of kin, so it took them a while to. They actually didn't even find any of his family members. They didn't contact. No, but we didn't find out until he was passed away, until like 5 or 6 days later.
Damn.
And it was only because my sister-in-law, Michael's wife, who he's still been legally married to, even though they had been on and off for a long time, she had gone over to his apartment because she was worried. She was thinking, well, he was supposed to show up to a meeting, an important meeting they had for CYFD, because they were trying to get their kids back, which they did, and thank God now she's sober, she's doing great, and she's legally got the kids back. But she went to his apartment, and apparently the security guard was there, and she was knocking on his door, and she was told that he had been deceased. And she's like, what? And so she calls the cops. The cops, they give her kind of the runaround for a minute, and then they want to know who she is. And she's like, well, I'm his wife. And so they meet up with her, and then, one of the cops just said, hey, I'm sorry I actually answered this call. We didn't have next of kinship information here. And she thought that was kind of bullshit, because it's pretty easy to find some emergency numbers and things like that if you look back. So, and then that was it, pretty much, you know.
That's crazy.
So he passed away by himself. It's one thing to be knowing when your family member is diagnosed with something and the whole family can be around, and then the most devastating and morbid thing is to find out and know that they've been passed away. They had passed away 5-6 days ago.
Right. And the only reason I brought it up is with the amount of true crime and things that people listen to nowadays. And I've said it my wife interviewed me for a podcast episode, and I said it in that episode she said it, everybody's curious. Nobody's going to admit it because it's not socially acceptable or not the thing to do, but everybody wants to know what happened or how it happened. Like, I'm the most guilty of that. If any of my friends or anybody who's under my age passes away, I'm like, that's absurd. That's abnormal. What happened? I want to know. I need to know. And so, that's why I wanted to touch on that and do the justice of telling his whole story, start to finish. And, it's very sad. Michael was a great dude, and it sucks that he went out like that, but he had a good family. He lived a good life. He was a good dude. And I can vouch for him being sober. I was at his funeral. He was bulked back up. He was the big Michael that I used to see.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, that thing that you said about everybody wanting to know. And I agree with you on that. I don't know why it's just, for whatever reason, I've asked myself that so many times, why can't they just say it? It helps provide closure for people.
Oh, absolutely. And I can vouch for that too. I also went over this in my episode, but when my brother passed, I know it's super irrational, but for like, I don't know, 10 days before his funeral, before we actually saw him deceased, I had it in my head that it was wrong, and they were going to bring him back to life, and there was still a chance, and all of this stuff. Like, it wasn't said and done. Like, I would go to sleep at night and have these vivid dreams about them being like, oh no, we were wrong. He's okay. He just needed X, Y, Z, and he's okay, and he'll be fine. And then to actually see him passed away is when it actually hit me like a ton of bricks that, this shit's real. He ain't coming back. And I feel like people telling you how they resulted in passing away is sort of like that. It makes it real. It helps you be like, okay, well, they're not coming back. It's real.
Absolutely. And I think that
I mean, aside from it also being a morbid curiosity,
in a crazy way, I feel that should be the norm. That people should start just saying, yeah, no, this is the way they pass.
sure, destigmatize it.
Yeah. I don't know why. I mean, for what? It's not disrespecting.
Well, okay, but I can also say that a lot of people have a hard time talking about it and not breaking down again and, like going back into a depression and all that, especially when it's the first time you've experienced that. Like, I don't know. I can say that when my brother passed, I from the beginning didn't have a problem telling people the story. I'd break down crying as I was telling the story. But that was when it was still fresh. And as time's gone by, like, yeah, I still think about my brother. I still get sad, but it doesn't affect me the same way. And I'm more than happy to tell people the story and glad to talk about it. It keeps it fresh in my mind, if that's weird to say. But it's, he had a story too. He's not here to tell it, and I'm glad to tell it for him. So it's beyond. I'm more than happy to satisfy people's morbid curiosity, or finish the tale for them, finalize it. So I think that you're right. It should be more normalized and destigmatized. It's not something we should shame people for talking about or being curious about. It's not bad. It's part of life, and we need to face that.
And almost in a way that you keep, like you said, sometimes you get sad and you think about him. Same for me here. I feel that being able to tell people that and keep those feelings in our hearts is, in a crazy way, a way that we're still honoring them and their memories.
Sure.
That we're still here.
Absolutely.
Thinking about them and honoring them.
Sure.
By being able to be vulnerable.
Yes.
And,
vulnerability, my favorite.
Yeah.
Now, real quick, I'm glad this all went well. I again thank you for the vulnerability, and I thank you for being so honest and telling all these crazy stories. Like, you have some crazy stories, bro, and your family has crazy stories, and I'm glad that I know you guys. I have one question that I never have asked you, and I want to know.
Yeah.
What the hell happened to your arm? You have a gnarly ass scar. If you're listening to the audio version of this and you're not watching it on YouTube,
yeah, I'll raise my arm up right there.
Ronnie has a gnarly ass scar on it. He's got a couple of them on the same arm, his left arm here. And what the hell happened, dude?
This was literally when I was only 3 years old, and it's just grown up with me.
Holy shit.
Andrew and I and
fucking Andrew.
Right. all the kids, all of us. But apparently the story goes, my mom, because we're from California, and my mom had been a kind of caregiver, housekeeper for this lady.
Okay.
And so she would bring us all over to her house. And the story goes is that we're all sitting outside on the porch just eating a basket of fries. And it's just a cement porch.
Sure.
With like 5 or 6 steps.
Okay.
No railing, no nothing. It's back in the day, so there was not a lot of railing on anything back then.
Fair enough.
Simple as this, I guess. There was a broken potted plant, a huge one, right on the ground on the side of the porch. Andrew just simply asked me to scoot over, and I did, and I ended up falling right into it. And I fall so just clean right into it.
Oh my God.
Right into the crack. It just slices my arm open.
That
completely.
is insane.
And my mom comes out, and Rosemary always tells us the part of this story too, where my mom was with like a washcloth over my arm, holding me and driving frantically to the hospital. We didn't even wait for an ambulance. My mom was driving me to the hospital there, holding on to me, and just practically running red lights and everything. And that's the story. They actually sewed me up like this for some reason. So my arm was like
if you're listening to the audio only version, Ronnie has his arm bent together in a V shape.
Yeah, and so they sewed me up like this with my arm just bent up like in a V shape. So I guess that's why my skin kind of looks like this, pushed together.
That's crazy.
Right there.
Well,
pretty gnarly story though.
Now, on each of my podcasts, I'm going to try to divulge a story too. And since I've already told the story of my brother's passing, I'll give you a twofer. So,
Right.
well, I'll match you there. So this
Ouch.
happened when I was 2 years old.
Jeez.
And again, I grew up with it as well. So, audio only people, I have a scar on my right hand that's oval shaped. I guess you call that an oval, an eye shape.
That looks like, yeah.
And
Yeah, it looks like an oval shape.
what happened is I vaguely remember it, but I remember I was 2. My mom was in the bathroom getting ready. I was standing on the toilet watching her. She was curling her hair. And I got this wild Spider-Man idea in my head. And so I jumped and grabbed the cord of the curling iron to go swing on it. And I pulled the curling iron down, it landed on my hand and just burnt the shit out of my hand. Ooh. Now, when I was that age, it covered my entire hand. The whole top of my hand was burnt off, basically. But, yeah, as I've grown up, it's shrunk, and it's pretty small now. It's almost not even noticeable. But, yeah, the other story that came to mind when you were talking about, and I don't know if I want to divulge this one so early in the podcast, but this was good, so I'll say it. When I was a young man, and my brother, who was born in 88, he was, 2 years old, maybe a year or 2 old, still crawling, so if that is any indication. My dad was a horse trainer, so we grew up around the horses, and, you've seen a horse walker, right?
Yeah.
You just hook the horse to it, and it walks him in a circle. Okay, well, we used to put the horse halters on the ends of the walker arms, and we'd sit in those and swing around. Turn it on and just swing around over and over. And, it was fun. That's all we had to do. So I was supposed to be watching my brother Fabian, who was born in 88. I was supposed to be watching him. And I was not. I was playing on the swing, on the walker. And so I had it running, and me and my other brother were swinging around in a circle, and I didn't pay attention. Fabian crawled into the center where the motor is and grabbed the belt, the drive belt, and it ran it through the motor around the pulley and basically chopped his thumb into 2 on the top. So the top was hanging off by a little thread of skin. And so I went, and I remember going and telling my mom, something's wrong with Fabian's hand. And she came out and picked him up, and yeah, his fucking thumb was hanging off, and they started freaking out, and oh, you should have been watching him. So we jumped in my dad's truck, and this was at the Downs in Santa Fe. Back in those days, we traveled with the Downs. So wherever the season was, like in Albuquerque and Raton and Ruidoso or wherever, we would travel with the season. And so this just happened to be the time of year where we were here in Santa Fe. And so we jumped in the truck, and we were hauling ass to St. Victims. And I remember my dad looking down at me, pissed as fuck, because my mom's just holding my brother's thumb together, hoping that he doesn't lose it. And my dad, I was sitting right next to him, and he just fucking cocked back and boom, elbowed me in the face and knocked out my front teeth. Oh, I mean, they were loose. I was going to lose them anyway. But I said, oh, you knocked out my teeth. And he's like, next time I'll knock off your head.
Oh, jeez.
I mean, they were mad justifiably.
Oh, God.
He didn't hit me hard enough to like black out my eyes or give me a bloody nose or anything. It was just kind of you little fucker. You're supposed to be watching him, and now look at it. So, yeah, so now my brother has this really deformed long thumb, and they sewed it back together, but weird. Just, it's, stories of life, scars. And I've got another one with my other brother, but I'm going to save that for another episode. So again, thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for taking the time and coming all the way down here to do this with me. I really appreciate it. You've got some incredible stories.
Well, thank you very much, James. I really appreciate you, taking the time also to have me on here.
Of course.
It's been a pleasure. And again, it's actually been pretty therapeutic.
Good. I'm glad to hear that, man. I appreciate that and respect that. So.
Yeah, so...
You give
remember, therapy costs a lot in podcasts.
There you go. So. Not here. It's cheap here. It's free. So yeah, give all the family my best. Tell Andrew I said hi, and I'm sure we'll be in communication soon.
Yeah, well,
maybe we can get a round 2 of this.
Absolutely, I'd love it, man.
All right, buddy.
All right.
Thanks.